1946 separated Singapore from its hinterland of 500 years and defined Malaysian politics for decades to come. That year, the Malayan Union was formed. Why was this event so important? Let's go way back in time. As early as the 15th century, Malacca ruled over Singapore. Singapore remained part of Malaya even after the British came. In the early 20th century, British Malaya had three parts: the Strait Settlements, the Federated Malay States, and the Unfederated Malay States. The British had the most control over the Strait Settlements, which included Singapore. They had the least control over the Unfederated Malay States. But in 1946, the British wanted to consolidate their control over Malaya. They created the Malayan Union. The sultans gave up all their powers to the British, except in religious affairs. Almost anyone born in Malaya received citizenship. Anyone who had lived in Malaya for at least 5 out of the past 8 years could apply for citizenship. Many Malays protested against the Malayan Union. They felt that the sultans had been pressured into giving up their powers. They were also unhappy that citizenship would be easily granted to immigrants. 1 month later, the Malay Nationalist Party UMNO was formed. The protest led the British to backtrack. In 1948, the Federation of Malaya replaced the Malayan Union. New citizenship criteria made it harder for Chinese and Indian immigrants to become citizens. The British also gave back some powers to the Malay rulers. Alarmed by this change, some Chinese created the Malayan Chinese Association in 1949. Politics was increasingly drawn along racial lines. Indeed, UMNO President On Jaafar was increasingly uncomfortable with UMNO's racial politics. He tried to open party membership to all races. He also wanted to rename his party the United Malayan National Organization. But those proposals failed. So On Jaafar left the party he founded. His successor fought for independence, and Malaya became independent in 1957. But Singapore was still under British control. The Malayan Union excluded Singapore, as did the Federation of Malaya. Singapore became a separate crown colony. Hence, politics evolved differently. When Lee Kuan Yew and others formed the People's Action Party in 1954, it was only a Singaporean political party. In 1959, the PAP swept to power. It was the final step in creating two different political systems in the two territories. On the one hand, the PAP advocated for multiracial politics. On the other hand, UMNO fought for Malay special rights. Despite their differences, both sides agreed to merge in 1963. Their common history stretched for half a millennium, and they expected massive economic benefits. But by then, people on both sides had very different ways of thinking, so it's understandable why conflict erupted.
After the riots, then Malaysian Deputy Prime Minister Tun Razak visited Singapore to feel the pulse of Singapore Malays. Tun Razak concluded that Singapore Malays were different from Malayan Malays, as there's a Malay saying, "Rambut sama hitam, hati lain-lain," which means that we may look the same, but our hearts differ. In other words, it was not only Chinese Singaporeans who could not be cowed by threats of riots and mayhem. Malay Singaporeans, too, could not be easily seduced by appeals to race and religion. Singaporeans were an altogether obstreperous people. Better for Singapore to leave Malaysia. And that set in train events which led to the 9th of August, 1965.
It's also understandable why some of Lee Kuan Yew's actions set off shockwaves in Malaysia. They appeared ordinary to Singaporeans, but implied fundamental changes in Malaysia.
They say they are worried about the Malays. I say, so are we. We want to raise their standard of living, and we will, and faster than they can. And at the end of 5, 10, 15, 20 years, a new generation will grow up that will no longer respond to the special VHF they use. They'll be tuning into the multilingual network. They'll be thinking like us, working like us, trained like us, prepared to live with us like Malaysians. Then we win. And history is on our side.
Lee Kuan Yew cried in disbelief when Singapore separated from Malaysia in 1965.
I had believed in Malaysian merger and the unity of these two territories. You know, as a people connected by geography, economics, and ties of kinship.
But years later, he explained that merger was doomed from the start.
Having had the experience of one merger and being expelled, you don't want to repeat the process.
In 2013, Lee elaborated that both sides had very different political systems, so it was inevitable that they would coexist separately. The train of events that followed the Malayan Union's formation seems very reasonable. Yet, no one realized it would split two territories connected for centuries. So, what can we learn from this? Politics and leadership can fundamentally change your way of thinking. Regardless of your political views, always think before you vote. Because who knows, your vote could impact history for centuries to come.